I chose to read the shorter form of the gospel reading today because the longer form takes like 3 pages to read. But anyway, what's the main point that is practically being offered for us who have already reached ika-19 na ron kaadlaw? And if we say Quaresma or 40 days, 21 more days, and the season of Lent is almost over. But here in the context of our Lenten observances, we are going deeper into the flow of the many beautiful reflections and opportunities and even certain contexts or experiences that we may be able to put into in the context also of journeying together as a church. Now, there is one interesting stream or line of thought that connects all the readings for today, which is actually water. The first reading tells us about God's miraculous deed when Moses struck the stone according to God's command and water flowed, in order to satisfy the thirst of the people, despite the fact that the people were grumbling. And that's the reason why it is called, and it is also repeated in the responsorial psalm today, the place where God tested them and where they grumbled was called, or the place was called Meribah and Massa. Meribah is a Hebrew word for quarreling, multiplication of words, and then Massa is Hebrew for the place of testing. The second reading also speaks about the Spirit of God that is given to us, just as the love of God is poured out into our hearts. And when we use the expression pour out, what is going to be poured out? It's still, again, something to do with water. In the Gospel reading, the centrality of the well and the woman and Jesus conversing there is a very significant dimension in what we consider water as an essential element and need for our lives. But as an interesting thing about this beautiful narrative from the Gospel of John, I would use the Cebuano play of words that for the first time in how many years already when I started teaching in the seminary, I always used to illustrate the very beautiful message of today's Gospel reading in relation to water and the well. And the word that I am going to use is, usa may binisaya of when you get water from the well. When you use the bucket, it's called timba, no? So mo timba ta aron makakuha og tubig. Okay? But do you know that in the process of Jesus' conversation with the woman, with the Samaritan woman, what happened was she was able to share to Jesus and to tell the truth and accept the very reason why she came there in the holy hour of the afternoon. Usually women fetch water or get water from the well around 4 to 5 o'clock, where they chit-chat, where they do a lot of things, conversation, and what is taking place when women are gathered. But this woman came in the afternoon, very early. And for that reason, we are told about who this woman is. She has plenty of husbands already. And that's the reason why she comes there very, very early than the women come, so that dili siya mahimo nga sumsuman sa ilahang tabi, to avoid the things nga daghan ng mga marites na atong panahon na di ay. So that's the reason. So Jesus was able to get through the depths of her experience of her life. And so as Jesus was asking her to do the timba, the woman made an ambit. Nagpa-ambit. So kung inyong bali-baliho ng mga letters sa timba, that's also the same letters for ambit. So when we draw water deep down into the well of the living water that God gives, we cannot help the fact that the process is a process of sharing. Ang pagtimba, usa ka paagi sa pag-ambit, samtang kung kita usab magpaambit, makatimba usab kita sa tubig sa kinabuhi. Finally, there is another set of words that I would like to use in playing, in understanding the context. And this is in English, conversation. Jesus' conversation with a woman led to her conversion. No? So when we are talking about conversion nowadays, it can only take place and it can only happen when we are open and be able to tell, to share what is from deep within us. Conversation leading to conversion. And then ang pagtimba ng mudala o pagpaambit. Because when we are conversing, when we are engaged in a heart-to-heart talk, that is what we call ambit, right? Nagpaambitanay kita sa atong kasinatian. And along the process, there is a change that takes place. And that is God's grace. That is God's blessing. That is God's graciousness. Just as, according to the second reading today, His love is being poured out into our hearts. And where is our heart? It's in the depths. No, motimba ta dito sa kinahiladman nga atong ipadayag, ipaambit, and a change happens with the grace of God, putting everything into proper context. And so as we continue this Eucharistic celebration, because this is also the very reason for the season of Lent. It is a way of getting deep into our lives, into ourselves, into our hearts, and opening up to the Lord so that His pouring into our hearts will always be considered a constant care and concern because He loves us very much as His children. Amen.